So I want to make sure that Norm, we finished covering what we started with you yesterday, buddy. So was there anything else you wanted to go ahead and cover from yesterday? I know we kind of picked apart things where we might have fell a little bit short, but in the end, I do want to get to the objection, though, that had we done certain things a little bit differently, I do want to at least address that, though, bro. So I didn't want you to think I forgot about you, Norm.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, floor is yours, Norm. Talk to us.
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted to do it later. So yeah, as I was going, when you leave an appointment like that, when I literally thought halfway through it was going to be a lay down, I had it. And maybe that's when I took my foot off the gas, which is never good. And then when I got that answer at the very end, well, we just want to hear it out of their mouths. I literally must have looked like deer in the headlights because I was floored. But like you said, it's a good learning experience, and it sucks, and I still think I might get the deal, but it is what it is. It's just, and I think you answered all my questions yesterday with, if I would have spent more time in the steps like I'm supposed to, and I really just think I took my foot off the gas and just thought, well, this is a lay down, which I know better. I know I should never do that, and I did it. So I just, stupid rookie mistake. I was excited. I'm like, hey, I'm out of my first deal with Apex. I'm going to get this. I'm going to look like the hero. So it was, nothing less than my ego got in the way.
Okay, well, number one, kudos to you for recognizing that, buddy, and not trying to talk your way out of it and saying, "Look, I did everything I could do." So good for you on that. You made a comment that is probably good for everybody on this call. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a rep sit there and tell me that, when I got there and I sold it, it was a lay down, or I'm going to go out there and I'm going to sell this because this is going to be a lay down. Sometimes those lay downs get sold, sometimes they don't. What I would tell everybody here, though, is in my opinion, no matter what happens out there, lay downs are created. Okay. We create lay downs based on the things that we do. But also, too, I can't tell you how many times a rep has gone out to a quote unquote lay down and sit there and screw that up. Okay. So keep in mind, lay downs are created, but you can also sit there and mess up a lay down too. So, as Norm shared with us, we want to make sure that we go out there and we do our job. Just do your job. That's the only thing that I would always tell you guys. The rules for me when I'm running leads is, number one, I run every lead cheerfully and without prejudice. I don't look anything up on Zillow. I don't care about any of that. I don't give a crap about the neighborhood. I don't care how nice the house is or how crappy the house is. I've been into more houses that I'm afraid that if we pull the windows out, the freaking house is going to fall apart. Okay. But people in those houses buy windows too. Okay. People in those houses, they have good credit too. Not all of them, but a lot of them do, and my whole goal is to go out there and find a reason to stay there. And the reasons I'm looking for to stay is so I can pitch within reason. One legs I want to stay away from if I can help it. But I also have to recognize that some one legs you have to pitch sometimes. Okay. Sometimes you have to pitch a one legger. I prefer not to, but sometimes you have to. Okay. There are exceptions to the rules, and sometimes we have to do that. We just can't make it the rule, or because one legs just don't sell. I mean, they don't. And the ones that do, the amount of times you win, it's not worth the amount of time you lose. To me, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So for me, I'm looking for reasons to stay. Okay. You're going to go to a house, and when you get there, they're going to sit there and tell you they just wanted to replace a piece of glass. We're going to be upset with the canvasser who set that up. What the hell am I doing out there? We don't replace glass. Why am I here? Okay. Well, just sometimes we have to go out there and we have to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. That's part of the deal sometimes. So when you run across that one there, let's see if we can't talk ourselves into an appointment. We're already there. They set the time aside. You set the time aside. You got dressed. You know, charged up the battery in your car, put gas in your vehicle, and you drove all the way out there. To me, when I go out there, hey, look, if there's a way I can get out there and somebody's going to get punished, and that's all there is to it, because Shorty showed up, and my time is worth something. And you got my ass out of bed and out of my house. Somebody's got to buy something. That's just the way it is. So we have to look for reasons. Okay. We have to look for reasons. So when you run across that guy that is saying, I just want to replace the glass, fine. Then explain to him, okay, not a problem, folks. You know, just let me hit you with some of this though. Number one, we don't replace glass. We're not a glass replacement company. What we do, however, is we do full replacements. And what that means is we're going to take out the glass, the frames, the hardware, the screens. We're going to put new frames, new glass, new hardware, new screens. Basically, we're going to put a more energy efficient or secure window and door on your home. So the question I would have for you is, putting a more energy efficient or secure window and door on your home, is that something you're looking to do someday? I know it's not going to be today, but you know, folks, someday. Are you going to do it someday? Yeah, we're going to do it someday, but we just want to get this piece of shit fixed, and that's all. We're not ready to do Windows right now. Okay, well, that's awesome, sir. Typically, what happens when I come out and then give them the agenda and remind them, hey, look, you put the time aside. I put the time aside. I made a special trip just to come out here to see you folks. And here's what I can do for you. And see if we can't talk ourselves into a pitch. Okay, let's see if we can. Everybody here, with the exception of Diana, Tanner, if he was here, Alex and Rylan and Cameron, everybody else here has sold windows that when you got to a customer's house, that customer swore on a stack of Bibles and a pile of rosary beads neck high to a damn giraffe that they were not going to buy windows today. They're not interested today. There's not a freaking thing you can tell me that's going to cause me to buy windows. And then an hour and a half, 2.5, 3 hours later, you walk out of there with a signed contract. Everybody here has done that. So maybe, just maybe, the person that you're talking to that's giving you that little bit of pushback, maybe we can talk ourselves into the appointment first. Let's win one battle at a time. Find a way to pitch. Find a way to get in it. Then when we win that battle, then go through the battle of pitching. And the funny thing is, somebody told me a long time ago, if you can look for a good reason to stay and look for a reason why you need to pitch this, do a good inspection. Find a way to get that window out of your car and in front of them. Magic will happen. It may not happen all the time, but it will happen a lot more often if you at least do that than do nothing at all and walk away. Okay? You might as well go and do it. You're already there. You might as well give it the best you've got. So just because somebody wants to fix glass, not a reason for us to walk out. You know, that's not a reason for us to walk out. Not at all. See if we can't get into a pitch. You're already there. So anyway, good self-reflection on that, Norm, that you would sit there and be that way. So if there's nothing else to cover, then we'll go ahead and move on. Okay. Did we sell any? I'm sorry, sir.
We're good. Thank you.
You got it. Did we sell anything yesterday? Tough day yesterday. Okay, so the only deal that we sold yesterday, Phil sold a little deal here yesterday, a little baby deal for a little over 11,000. Margin on that one actually wasn't too good. He hit that one at about 33, just a little under 33% margin. So we'll sit there and whip on his ass later on, but he got us on the board, so we didn't sit there and blank, which is good because he's the guy that blanked the day before that. So it's about time he's trying to hold up his end of the bargain. All right. So what I want to talk about today then is let's get into a little bit of step 10. Fairly easy is step 10. It does take some stones a little bit. So for me, step 10, keep in mind that right now, none of you, for the most part, have a cancellation problem. The one thing I will say about the Western region, it's very different from the Eastern region. The Eastern region has a lot of cancellations after they sell a job. They get a lot, way more than we do out here in the West. And a large part of that is because they rescission close a lot. And the one thing I will say about the Eastern or Western region is you guys don't rescission close a whole lot, which is awesome. Is there anybody here that understands the terminology rescission close? Is there somebody who does not understand what rescission close means? Gotcha. Anybody else? Okay, so real quick, rescission close. Rescission closing is when you tell a customer, hey, look, let's just sign the contract. The law says you have 3 business days to go ahead and think about this. And if you decide to change your mind, you can call me up and cancel. Okay. That's basically rescission closing, is when you're using the 3-day right of rescission to allow somebody to be able to go ahead and make a decision. Okay. I am not a big fan of rescission closing at all. I think rescission closing is unethical. If you ask me, that is my opinion. If somebody doesn't share that opinion, you're probably going to be right also. I just look at it that way. I think rescission closes is unethical, and I think it makes for a weak sales rep who gets into the habit of rescission closing. Okay. However, in the event that you have to rescission close or you feel like you do, then what we're going to need to do is button down a lot better. Now, in my former life, wherever I was at, if a sales rep rescission closed without my permission, I terminated them. That was my rule. Not something that we're going to do here right now, especially on the Western side region, because we don't have that kind of a problem here. However, it does lead me into step 10, though. If for whatever the reason we're having to use that rescission close, and even whether you don't rescission close, then you have to step 10 better. So step 10, what is step 10? Step 10 is the button down or the warm down, as some people may like to call it. Okay. A lot of deals lost, a lot of times are lost because we don't rescission or we don't button down properly. All right. When it comes to a step number 10, the number one rule of step number 10 is you have to listen real well to what the customer is telling you when you ask certain things. Okay. So here's how I basically button down, and we can go ahead and, listen to the recording afterwards. Okay. When I button down, I get all the paperwork signed except for my contract. Once I sit there and I have the contract, here's how I actually explain it. It doesn't matter whether it's in our contract or not. This is just typically what I tell people. Okay. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we've talked about an awful lot of things today. All right. The last thing for us to go ahead and fill out here is going to be your contract. So here's how your contract works. You bought windows for $20,000. You're going to finance this with $2,000 down, means you're financing 18 grand, blah, 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 blah. Here's what your payments and everything are. Now, basically the way it works is this. The law says you have 3 days to go ahead and go through what we would call a buyer's remorse period, if you will. In other words, for you to be able to sit there and think about this for 3 days, or at the end of 3 business days, if you choose to go ahead and cancel this transaction within those 3 days, you may cancel this transaction without any penalty or any repercussions. However, in the event you try to cancel this contract after the 3-day right of rescission, then you owe 33% of the contract amount and you receive no windows. Not a real good day for the Blaylock household. Okay. That being said, the question I have to ask you is this before we sign anything. Do you have any thoughts or any reservations in your mind at all about the decision that you have made today? Any thoughts or any reservations? Here's where the listening part starts. A lot of times a customer will tell you, no, I think everything will be okay. No, everything should be fine. I really liked everything that I heard, so everything should be fine. Think keywords like I think, it should be, it appears, everything sounds, all those to me are problem answers. So you got to jump on top of that. Well, you know what? With all due respect, Mr. Blaylock or Mrs. Gralton or whoever, with all due respect, you said, I think. Again, do you have any reservations in your mind at all? Any thoughts? And the reason I'm asking you this is there's no reason for us to move forward with this, but the possibility exists that you are going to be able to change your mind. So if there's anything there you think that we should discuss right now, tell me what it is. Are you trying to get them to cancel right now? You're damn right you are. Because if you can get them to cancel there and then save it right there by going through things, that's a lot easier. The moment they talk to their pillow and they wake up the next day or 2 days later or 3 days later and say, I want to cancel, that is extremely, extremely, extremely hard to save. Extremely hard. So you have a better chance of getting this stuff and taking care of it now, especially if you rescission close. Look, I know you said you wanted to use the 3 days. Are we wanting to do that because we want to shop around some more? We have got to get into that. Again, you guys don't have a big cancellation problem now. However, everybody's cancellation percentage is probably going to go up pitching the way we are, because we're going to go ahead and push people a little bit more than what we're usually used to pushing. Okay. And because of that, and because we're pushing that a little bit, people are going to sit there and tend to change their mind a little bit more. Typically, cancellation should be 10% or less. If you're floating around that 10%, you're doing pretty good. Now, some of you may think, well, I have 3% now. Why would I want to go to 10%? Well, that's because you're also selling more deals now also. So that extra 10%, you're still going to come out ahead. But because we're going to push a little bit, we have to expect that cancellation rate to go up a little. Okay. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the way the button down really works. It's not hard. The hard part is listening. So you're not just trying to hurry up and get out of Dodge. Okay. A lot of times, some of us here who have sold things walk out and we have that feeling, man, this is probably going to cancel. Hey, how'd you do? I sold, but I don't feel too good about it. Okay, well, if that's the way it is, then why did you walk out of that house that way? Then if that's the case, then lean on them in the button down. Lean on them. If it's going to cancel, it's going to cancel. I'd rather they tell me why they're probably going to cancel now, because I may have an opportunity to correct that. I may have that. Okay. Maybe what happened is they didn't quite understand something in my pitch that I may have to go back over. The whole white man can't jump, right? You can hear Jimi Hendrix, but you can't hear Jimi Hendrix. So sometimes people hear you, but they're not listening to you. So we have to take that opportunity there. If we think that there's something funny there, then lean on them in the button down and ask that question. Look, do you have any thoughts or any reservations in your mind at all about the decision you've made? Folks, if you do, speak up now. This is the best time to do it. And you wouldn't be the only person that's ever done it. So talk to me about, folks. Think out loud. Is there something that's not making you comfortable here, or that you're uncomfortable with? Get that conversation out there. You'll be surprised. Some of that you're going to be able to fix right there. And you're going to see that customer go, oh, okay, all right. Well, yeah, you did say, okay, well, yeah, I feel better now. Yeah, I'm okay now. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. So you're going to sit there and you're going to get some of that sometimes. There's a lot of information that we're sharing with these people when we're out there. There's a lot. And because of that, they don't always remember everything. So, of course, because of that, their head gets to running with them. So if you get that funny feeling, in your toes, then lean on them in the button down to find out what it is. Do you have any thoughts or reservations at all, folks, about the decision you've made? And keep in mind, just because you're wanting to move forward, you wouldn't be the only person that had thoughts or reservations as they moved forward. So think out loud, folks. How can I help you? Is there anything here? Nope, we're good. We're solid. We sure? Yep. All right. Can't argue with a confident man. Hey, listen, do me a favor then. If you can do me a favor, if you understand all this, kind of read through this. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I'm going to need your signature here and your signature here. And let's go ahead and move forward with this partnership, and we'll take care of it. That would be what the button down is. Very easy, Very simple. Okay. The hard part is the listening and not being afraid to ask the question, do you have any thoughts or any reservations about the decision you've made today? Anything at all, folks, whatever it is, speak out loud, think out loud, talk to me here. That would be your button down. So pretty simple. Okay. It's pretty simple. Any questions about the button down? Anything that makes you feel a little funny or that you want to dig into a little bit more?
So Terry, you're doing that prior to them signing the contract?
Yes. Yeah, I do it prior to signing the contract.
Any particular reason
And
why?
yeah, there is. That's a good question, Jimmy. The reason why is, depending on what's going on, I may also sit there and say, look, folks, and the reason I'm asking you this right now too, is I don't want you to sign anything if you're feeling uncomfortable about the decision you've made. I don't want you to sign anything. So before we move forward, again, thoughts, reservations, anything, or are you good? No, I'm good. Cool. Go ahead and sign here. That's the reason why I do it that way. If you wanted to get them to sign first and into it, that's fine too, Jay. You can do that also. Again, that's just the rotation that I use, but that doesn't mean you can't get them to sign it first and then go through with that. But that's what I do. To me, it sounds you're being like the good guy when you sit there and say, look, man, I don't want you to sign anything until you're 100% comfortable with this deal. So do you have any thoughts or reservations at all? Anything, speak out loud. Cool, no good, then sign here. That's why I do it, Jimmy. That's all. But you could get them to sign it first, buddy.
Now, if it's a really smooth appointment, the trust is high, everything's good, they're super excited, would you still want to even bring up the 3-day rescission or put any doubt in their mind at this point?
Yes. So, okay. So there's always going to be an argument here. A lot of people sit there and say, I never mentioned the 3-day right of rescission. I never mentioned the 3-day right of rescission. All right. That actually is illegal as hell, technically. The Disclosure Act says that we are supposed to go over that with them. We're supposed to. This isn't one of those ones. Look, if a customer decided to cancel outside of rescission and they wanted to make a deal about it and say, hey, look, I didn't know that. My man told me to sign here. It was late. I was tired. I just signed. And then we were to get asked in court, hey, look, did you actually explain this to him? No, but I gave it to him to read. They can get out. The Disclosure Act says we are supposed to explain to them what the 3-day right of rescission is and when they are able to cancel. Right now, our 3-day right of rescission, I'm trying to get that fixed. I know it's going to suck for a lot of people, but I just want to make sure that we're legal and we don't run into a problem. By law, the 3-day right of rescission is actually supposed to be on a separate piece of paper, all by itself. And if it's a married couple, Mrs. Customer gets her own 3-day right of rescission, and Mr. Customer gets his own 3-day right of rescission. That's the way it's supposed to be. Our paperwork is not correct when it comes to the legality of that. The reason why it's supposed to be separate is the wife or the husband should be able to cancel if they want to, whether the other person agrees or not, and to be able to turn that in. Or if the wife is incapacitated because she's in a hospital, the husband has his own to be able to sign, or all of a sudden within those 3 days, they decide they're going to get a divorce because Mrs. Customer just found out that Mr. Customer has been sleeping with the neighbor. Okay. That's the way it's actually supposed to be. And that scenario I just gave you of the neighbor thing, that actually happened here in Phoenix, maybe a month and a half, almost 2 months ago. The second deal Phil sold actually happened that way. Sold it. Husband found out his wife had been sleeping with the neighbor literally 2 days afterwards and canceled that puppy right away. When the wife found out, she actually started griping about it, but we had to sit there and take his cancellation because he was on the contract. We just had that literally a month and a half ago. That's why I brought it up. So though we may not want to talk about the 3-day right of rescission, the law says we're supposed to. The law says we're supposed to. So at the same time, the way our 3-day right of rescission is supposed to work is we're also supposed to have a date on it, saying that they have midnight of such and such a date. Okay. There's supposed to be a date on that. So if you sold the job on January the 1st, and that's on the Monday, they have the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th. They have until midnight of the 4th to cancel this transaction. We're actually supposed to put that date on there. Again, legally wise, that is actually supposed to be there. So
Let's
yeah,
be
the
clear.
answer is yes.
Like that's gonna be, you saying that that's going to be going into effect shortly? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, legal is going through it now so they can go ahead and put everything together, because Apex did not realize that that's the way it's supposed to be in most states. It's not that way in all, but it's that way in most, that you have to have a separate one. So for example, maybe in Washington, you may be able to put them both on one contract. Okay. You may be able to put them both on one contract. However, I can tell you for a fact though, Colorado, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, for sure has to be separate. But they both are supposed to have a date on it. You can't just say 3 business days, because not everybody understands a business day. Some people think that Saturday is not a business day. And actually, for this type of a transaction, it is. A business day is not considered a business day by a bank. So there are actually 2 different types of cancellations to be in the United States. There is R type, which counts Saturday as a business, and then there is a bank type that Saturday is not considered a business day. So if you sell a job on a Friday and Monday's a holiday, the customer has to understand when that actually ends. Yeah, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, Apex has this. Do you want us to make sure that this is part of my paperwork packet, but I don't know if it is everybody else's. Do you want to make sure that this is sent out from this day moving forward? Because that's basically this.
Yeah, see,
notification in regards to it. There's a date here. It says no later than midnight of with the date. I mean, this is what you're talking about.
right. See, the paperwork for here in Phoenix, we don't have that. It's on the contract itself, and it doesn't even allow you to be able to put a date. I don't know if Salt Lake City is the same way or whatever, but that form that you have there, Cody, that way, that's actually what it's supposed to be. And each customer is supposed to get their own. But that's what it's supposed to be. So that form you have, Cody, as part of your packet is actually the correct one, buddy. That would actually be correct.
Packet that I sent out to you guys, and I'll attach these and hyperlink them so that autofills it. You might have to do the date, but I'll get that fixed. I do have one question. Earlier, you said you get them to sign everything other than the contract. What are you getting them to sign?
Well, if if there's a tip agreement, if there is that has to be signed, or if the measure sheet, if that has to be signed, anything that needs to be signed that requires a signature, I do all that stuff. It's the contract is the last one that I go over. I want the contract to be the last thing I talk to them about paperwork wise. Most people want to talk about the contract first and then use the paperwork to hide and try to get their mind off of it. They're going to cancel. So I want to make sure that I address that last. So that's what I usually do. For me, I make the customer sign everything, even if there's not a signature on it. So if there's a way I can get them to sign it, then I want them to sign. I just want to put their name on everything. It is the way I do everything. So there is, Cody, since you have that correct paperwork there, you can go online, Cody, and you can print up a 3-day right of rescission calendar, okay, which is very helpful for the reps. And basically what it is, it'll give you a calendar for every single month. So if you sell a job, let's say on Tuesday, February the 17th, when you look on that calendar, Tuesday of February the 17th, in the middle of that date, it'll tell you what the 3rd day is, so you can fill it in easier. It helps a lot when you have Sundays or holidays that you're running into. So Mr. Rep or Mrs. Rep doesn't have to figure out all of that. It's already done for them. So, but it's a 3-day right of rescission calendar. So it makes it easier for the rep just to refer straight to it without having to sit there and count on their fingers and toes. what days are right and what days are not. Because where it gets weird is when you sell something on, say, a Thursday or a Friday, and Monday, for example, is a holiday. So if you sell it Thursday, they have midnight Friday, they have midnight Saturday, Sunday doesn't count, Monday doesn't count. So then you've got to go to Tuesday. It'll make it easier so they don't have to do all that math, and count and stuff. So I would look one of those up and I would have that. But everybody's going to eventually have what you have, Cody. The legality part of it is verbiage is going to be a little different for each state. So if you already have it for yours, then cool. But what you have there, I may or may not be able to use here. I can read through it though, if you want to send it to me. And if that's the case, then I'll use it. I'll start using that here then. But ours is on the contract itself with no date. So
I have a question.
any other yes, ma'am.
I do. You were saying that, when you were going through your rescission language, you were saying that, they'll pay up 1/3 and they won't get any windows. Is that something historical that we're gonna be switching to?
Well, that's what I said a minute ago when I started. I said, look, this verbiage isn't going to be in all the language. I'm just used to saying it, but we will be moving to that. There is no doubt. Anybody that canceled their transaction after the rescission date, then we keep 33% of the contract amount and they receive no windows. Okay.
So
We've
that
got
means-
entirely 2 minutes.
Would
Do what?
that- Who gets paid out on that? Would that be like commissions? Cause historically, we've let people back out. We don't have it very often. I've only had a handful of like backouts really at the end of the day.
But then
But we
that's,
get
we've
chargebacks.
gotten chargebacks if it's out, we've already gotten paid, so then we would then, as the seniors, have to pay that money back, or the junior reset it, and it was.
Or both,
Yeah.
both usually, yeah.
But and I 100% agree. I mean, if we're not getting our money, then you're not supposed to get yours. Okay. Now the argument I would make if I was a rep though is, well, wait a minute, hold on. I got them to sign a contract. I explained to them about their 3-day right to rescind. They signed that. They're canceling out of rescission, and you've chosen to sit there and let them get out. So why do I have to get hit? It wasn't my choice, it was yours. So there's that argument. Okay. Well, again, if we're not keeping any money, my argument to you will be, look, I get it. It's a call that we made. But if we're not getting any money out of it, then neither are you. Sorry you feel the way that you do. It's just business. And if we're not getting money, neither should you. This is part of the reason why on jobs like that, a customer should have to pay 33% or so of the contract amount and receive nothing. In this case here, now Mr. or Mrs. Rep still have an opportunity to sit there and make their money, or at least part of it, or whatever it may be. So there's not a chargeback there. The other thing is what happens when they cancel out a rescission after the job is already in production. Windows are being made. That's got to get paid for no matter what. We don't get to call the factory up and say, look, we let them out. They're going to tell us, fine, you still owe for the damn windows because we just made the damn things. So you're going to have to pay for it no matter what. So that's why the penalty is as such as it is. How we're going to work out the commission part of it, that part, that's not what this call is about. And I can't give you an answer for that yet. What I can sit there and tell you, as long as we have 33%, I will always argue that the rep and the junior did their job and we at least have part of the money. I will always argue that, always. But at this point in time right now, the way it works, it's hard for me to argue whether the rep and the junior did their job or not. If the company is not taking the money in, any money at all, and keeping it, you can't have yours either. If I don't get mine, you don't get yours. Nice job though, that you did a good job, but I'm sorry. So how that'll get worked out later, Michelle and Nicole, I don't know. But believe me when I tell you, I will argue for it though, when we get to that point, because there should be penalties for a customer that cancel out a rescission. However, what I will also tell you guys is canceling out a rescission, there are times where I'll let a customer out. It just depends on what the reason is, right? Number one, how big or how small is the job? If the job is a smaller job, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, okay, that's a lot of money for the rep. I get it. But the dollar amount, that may not necessarily that I want to sit there and die on. I want to die on an 18, 19, 20, $30,000 job. I'm going to die on that hill. But an $8,000, $6,000 job, not the hill I want to die on. But it depends on what the argument is. If the customer is using, when I look at a cancellation out of rescission, this is what I look at. Number one is the size of the job. Number two, the amount of margin that's in the job. And number three, what is the customer saying? If the customer is using magic words, then the magic words is going to get us out right away. Magic word being, I'm 84 years old. I didn't realize what I was signing. It was late. I was tired. They had been in my house for 4 hours or 3 hours or an hour and a half. And, I usually have my nap at that time and all that. Okay. Those are magic words there. 84 years old and I'm tired. That's a magic word right there. Court will sit there and side with them almost every single time. Okay. My husband's got the beginning of dementia and, I had a lot of things on. Okay. That's going to get them out almost every single time. So little things like that, those type of things there is when I allow a customer to get out right away. Past that, I'm not doing it. I've got one right now in Phoenix. We sold 2.5 weeks ago. They haven't sat there and they didn't remeasure that damn thing yet. She now wants to go ahead and cancel and I won't let her out. I don't give a shit that it's taking 2.5 weeks for them to get her. I don't care. The contract states that we're going to be there within 12 to 16 weeks. And they got to allow us the opportunity to fulfill that contract. And if she wants to go, then I'll sit there and we'll go to court and I'll sue her ass. For that, I'll go after them for that. That's not a good enough reason because I've waited 2.5 weeks and nobody measured. That doesn't mean a damn thing. That doesn't mean anything. So that type of a cancellation out of rescission, I won't let go. And I'll fight for that. So cancellations just depends, guys, on what's being said. But there are magic words. And age is a huge magic word. That's huge. That's huge. Okay. So hopefully that answered that for you, Miss Michelle. I hope it is. But that's where we'll be going, though, because we do have too much of it across the country. Not as much in your individual areas, but a lot of little bottles make a big bottle, though. So when you take 2 here, 3 here, 5 there, 1 there, next thing you know, at the end of the year, there's a lot. We have a lot. So other questions about that? Okay, so we are now just about ready to get out of here. And for the most part, guys, you have everything that you need to have. What we'll do from time to time, and I figure from time to time, about once every 2 weeks, I'm going to want to see all of you guys again in 2 weeks. We'll set up a day in 2 weeks to all get together like this. Your Tanners and Diana and Alex and Rylan and Cameron, especially you 3 or you 5, all of you really, but especially you guys. Let's get our feet bloodied up here a little bit and let's get beat up out there a little bit. And in 2 weeks' time, after you've had a chance to do this, then we'll bring everybody back and then find out, okay, what are you guys running into now that you guys have had a chance to run live with this thing, that you're seeing that you're having some difficult challenges, you're asking closing questions, but you can't get somebody to answer. Let's start keeping track of that as we go through this. And in a couple of weeks, we'll go over it. But typically, I always let everybody run for 2 weeks, and I don't usually say shit to them. Even when they're brand new here, I don't say nothing. And if they try to talk to me about stuff, I kind of just say, look, let's give it a couple of weeks first. Do what you do, so you don't sit there and feel like you're being, judged or looked at or somebody over your shoulder right away. And then we'll talk and start working some of the kinks out that you all are going to run into, and you all are going to run into them for sure, all of you. And then we'll address that then that way. Okay. Does that part sound okay and fair with everybody? Okay,
Yeah.
So holy shit. Is that thumbs up or is that I got a question up?
Thumbs up.
Okay, got you. Okay. So what questions do we have? If we don't have any, is there a scenario you guys want to go through? Is there something you want to do and put me on the spot to see what I can't do? So floor is now yours, guys. I'm going to try to be done talking now. I got almost no voice anyway, so I'm sure the cigarette smoking doesn't help either. So fire away.
Mary, can you go over the pros and cons with the vinyl again?
Well, and as part of that, Terry, what I was gonna say, if when questions were done, because we haven't really been able to dial in the role playing for the pros and cons for the 5 frame types, because we've been waiting for the video. So can you just do that the way you would with the homeowner here? So it's on here and recorded so that they can start studying that and dialing it in.
Okay. You can't see this because only the little people could see this. I got shit everywhere I'm stepping on top of. Can you see the board okay?
Yeah,
This is pros and cons of vinyl.
Okay, so right there. Let me put my little line so it's not in the glare. Okay, so pros and cons. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I would imagine you're probably like the average person. Average person meaning you want to make sure that you do all your research, do all your shopping, do your due diligence to make sure that you sit there and get all the information you need to get so you can make the best decision for you and your family. Would that be correct? Great. Let me go ahead and help you with that shopping right now and that research, because a lot of times folks don't really know what they're looking for, what they should be. So here's what we need to go ahead and do. You can research from now until the cows come home. Even if you had somebody that, I don't know, works for the CIA or the FBI or whatever, here's what you're going to find. There are basically 5 different type of frames out there. Okay. Number one, you have aluminum, you have vinyl. Now in vinyl, there's basically 3 different types of vinyl, and we'll go over that here in a minute. You also have fiberglass, you have wood, and then you have a product called Fibrex, which is a wood composite put out by Renewal by Andersen. Okay. The question here is we have to figure out what do we think is going to be best for us. Okay. Benjamin Franklin used to say, right, that if you're not sure what you should do or whether you should do something or not, you basically take a blank piece of paper, draw a line down the center, put the pros on one side and the cons on the other. And when the pros outweigh the cons, you should probably do it. Or if the cons outweigh the pros, you probably shouldn't. So let's take a look at that for a minute. Number one, what we have is we have aluminum. Now, with aluminum, pros and cons of aluminum. First off, aluminum is a very strong product because it's metal. When it comes to strength, nothing competes with the strength of a metal. So metal-wise or strength-wise, it's going to be stronger. At the same time, because it is stronger, it has thinner frames. So because it has thinner frames, it also has more glass. Okay. The other thing about aluminum, which is really good, is it comes in at a real cheap price point, because as far as price goes, it is the cheapest product that's out there when it comes to cost. So they're going to come in at a very cheap price point. Okay. However, the challenges with aluminum, though, is number one, because they are aluminum, they transfer heat and cold from one side to another, so from outside to inside. So they transfer heat and cold. They're not energy efficient unless you're looking at a thermally broken window, which we can go ahead and get into here in a little bit. At the same time, too, they oxidize. And as we looked at your aluminum windows earlier, the one thing we also saw is that they sweat as well, right? Okay. So we know that they go ahead and sweat. Okay. What else, when we were looking at your aluminum windows, what other challenges that you would see that you with your aluminum windows? What do you think that would be? Right. If they don't answer here, one of the things, remember when we were looking at the aluminum windows, how the boxed and butted ends or your mitered corners, how they were starting to split apart. Okay, because those are mechanically fastened. So they go ahead and they split in the corners. And you get a lot more dirt and dust infiltration. Okay. But again, the great thing is they do come at a cheap price point. That goes on one piece of paper. Then I pull out my next piece of paper. Okay. The next thing you're going to have is you're going to have vinyl. Now, the great thing about vinyl, though, is number one, unlike aluminum, vinyl is very energy efficient because their frames are temperature ignorant. Temperature ignorant meaning they don't transfer heat or cold from one side to another. Now, depending on the color that you get with vinyl, whether that be brown, white, or almond, those products there are going to tend to be a solid color all the way through. So the thing about a solid color is if they get scratched, sandblasted, maybe a tree branch falls down and scratches it, it's going to remain a solid color all the way through. So you won't see any discoloration there. And depending on how bad the scratch is, if you take like a 2000 or 3000 grit sandpaper and you wipe it down and rub that, a lot of those scratches you'll be able to actually rub out anyway. Okay. So that's a great thing about that. The other thing is they're low maintenance. Okay, as well. The other good thing about them is they come in at a fairly cheap price point. I say fairly because cheap price point. I say fairly because they're going to come in at a little higher price point than your aluminum is going to. However, they don't come near at the same price point that other materials, such as the wood, such as the fiberglass, or even that wood composite through Renewal by Andersen. So their price point is actually going to be a little higher, but still pretty good. However, the drawbacks to vinyl, and there's a lot, right? Vinyl tends to chip, fade, peel, pit, bubble. And the biggie is it also warps. Okay. Your typical vinyl frame, also, one of the major challenges with it is they're not very secure. Okay. They're not very secure. So, that being said, these are where your challenges, and you've probably heard about that through any of the advertising that you've seen, especially through Renewal by Andersen or Pella or somebody like that. Okay. So, there are the challenges. However, in your vinyl, there are basically three different types of vinyl. Okay. Number one, on vinyl, you have what they call 100% virgin vinyl. Okay. With 100% pure virgin vinyl, you're going to get basically a pure vinyl product, if you will, with no impurities or anything like that in there. Okay. Some of the problems that you have here is because of your second type of frame. Your second type of frame, vinyl frame, is called a 60-40 split. What a 60-40 split means is you have 60% plastic in it and 40% vinyl. Because of that plastic that's in it, the amount of plastic that's in it causes that product to sit there and get a lot worse in these challenges that are here. Typically, those places that you're going to see that is more of a contractor grade type of product that you're going to get maybe from a contractor or somebody like that, or a lot of the windows that they have at Home Depot or Lowe's or Sutherland's or Foxworth Galbraith or someplace like that, some of these big box stores, they tend to deal a lot with 60-40 splits, which is why that product comes in at such a cheap price when it comes to that. The last one that you have is what they call a reprocessed vinyl. Reprocess is not something you see a lot of. Basically, what that is, recycling all of this vinyl. And a lot of that stuff, you get a lot of impurities in that because when they recycle it, they recycle everything together. So your 60-40 split frames are going to be in that. Your 100% pure vinyl frames, virgin vinyl is going to be in that. Somebody that may have had a smoke break and didn't want to get caught smoking, who chucked in his cigarette, might be in there. I guess the best example I can give you, and I know this is going to sound pretty morbid, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, but here's how this works. Somebody sits there and their uncle passes away, right? Uncle Bob passes and we're going to cremate Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob goes into that when somebody else's uncle was in that before that. So the ashes that you get, if you really think 100% of that is only Uncle Bob, chances are it's not like that. I know it's morbid to think that, but we've all thought that when we had a cremated person. Okay. It's the same way. Just so you know, people chuck stuff in there. As morbid as it is, that's the way it works, though. That's the reality. Okay. However, what a lot of vinyl companies don't let you know, though, is there's actually a different type of vinyl as well. And what I mean by different type, so what we're going to call this is vinyl plus, if you want to call it that. Okay. What that is, it offers the same things that you see here. The difference is in a vinyl plus product, if you will, that product there is going to come with a thicker gauge vinyl. Now, there's your ticket right there on that. Because it's a thicker gauge vinyl, okay? Okay, because of that thicker gauge, that means the product doesn't warp the same way that other vinyl products do. And that's the biggie when it comes to that, is warping. The number one challenge with vinyl windows is they warp. However, your thicker gauge vinyl doesn't warp the same way. And if it does, those type of warranties will actually cover warping where others don't. So the thicker gauge means less to no warping. At the same time, too, because it is a thicker gauge, they don't sit there and they don't chip the same way. So you get less chipping. And on top of that, this type of a vinyl product is also going to have more UV protectants in it. So with more UV protectants in it, by having that, that means the product doesn't fade the same way. So less to no fading. And because of the UV protectant, it's not near as brittle. Okay. Typically with plastic product, vinyl product, things like that, as the product breaks down because of the UV rays, tends to make the product more brittle. And in this brittling also warps out, causes it to warp even more too. So because of the UV protectant is you have less to no brittle challenges. Okay. So by going with this product this way, we can eliminate some of the cons that are going to be here. At the same time, too, typically with your vinyl plus type of product, you're usually going to get some sort of a metal or fiberglass reinforced at the check rail, causing that product to sit there and be more secure as well. And we'll go ahead and get into that if that's something that you want to go ahead and talk about here in a bit. I'll certainly cover that with you. Now, this type of product, though, however, the price point is not going to be as good as aluminum, but it's not far off from most vinyl windows anyway, because with that price point, what you're basically looking at is something along those lines where you're looking at 2.5 star or dollar signs as opposed to 2 or 3. Okay. On that note, from there, we get into fiberglass. So on fiberglass, the great thing about fiberglass is you have the same advantage here as that you have with vinyl, both here and here. Number one, the frames are going to be more temperature ignorant. And because they are temperature ignorant, remember, they don't transfer heat or cold from one side to another. Okay, so that's a good thing, causing that product to be a lot more energy efficient. Okay, so there is some advantages to fiberglass for sure. All right. Another good thing about fiberglass is they have a lot of colors, so multicolors is a good thing, and they have thinner frames. So again, because they have thinner frames, like aluminum, they also have more glass. You notice here when I said that, I covered the more glass. You notice I didn't write thicker glass, though. The reason I didn't do that is because I don't want to make this list any bigger than I can. So, like aluminum, they have thinner frames, therefore they're going to have more glass. However, the drawback to fiberglass, number one, its biggest challenge is they have mechanically fastened frames. Now, the challenge with mechanically fastened frames means that because they're put together with screws and pins and things like that in the corner, that means the frames themselves leak. Okay. So basically, what I mean is if we were to take a cutaway of a fiberglass frame and put water in it, the water would leak out where it joins, just like it would with an aluminum window. However, your vinyl product doesn't do that. Because your vinyl product are fusion welded, when you put water in them, the water doesn't leak out. Okay. With fiberglass also, it also has more maintenance involved. Okay. What I mean by more maintenance is because it is a fiberglass product. A fiberglass product like a fiberglass boat is going to require some things to it. Now, like most of your fiberglass vehicles, a lot of fiberglass vehicles don't cover warping due to high heat. Okay. So in your high heat areas or times where things get really, really hot, you do have an opportunity to be some warpage there, but not as much as when you're looking at this type of fiberglass. Okay. So there can be some warping with it for sure. As an overall rule, most fiberglass windows do not come with specialty shapes. However, there is a company out there now that has actually created one, which would be Milgard. And being in the area that we're in, we're very familiar with Milgard, right? So the challenge with that, though, is on the specialty shapes, it comes at an extremely high price point because right now Milgard's the only guys that can do it. So they can charge a premium for it. So even when we get online and look at that, which I'd be happy to cover that with you as well, what you'll find out is on that, it's going to come at a very high price point. Again, because as of now, only Milgard can go ahead and do that. The next thing about fiberglass that you have on there is because fiberglass is thinner, then the spacing in between the two panes of glass on the IG units or the insulated glass units, that's going to go ahead and cause your glass, insulation glass, to be less insulating as far as its glass package is going to go ahead and go. And the number one thing about it, of course, it comes at a much higher price point overall than anything is going to be here. Okay.
Repeat that,
So, do
sorry.
what?
Repeat that one again, please. Why the glass isn't efficient?
Glass package is
Yeah.
thinner because they said the frame is thinner.
Right, because the frames are thinner. So because the frames are thinner, most of your glass, just about all of your glass packages for vinyl is going to come in at 5/8. Truth be told, that's also what
Yeah.
Renewal by Anderson and Pella is going to be. It's all going to be 5/8. Okay. So, and if you look at ours, of course, ours is a 1-inch super spacer. Okay. So, and then of course it comes in, like I said, the highest, a much higher price point. You notice I jumped from 2.5 to 4. So that's what I would put here. Hold on. I got to erase my paper.
Hey Terry, just to touch on that real quick. Really, I think one of my only concerns, I mean, in this particular example, let's just say they're leaning more towards the vinyl plus, which is where we want them to go. And they're seeing that 2.5 there, and we get the fair market value, and we're closer to Renewal by Anderson.
Do what?
Questions, so you just go through,
Okay.
like, just the natural word track. Terry, just keep going with the natural word track, and then let's ask a few questions at the end. Sounds right.
Okay.
So the next thing we're going to have, of course, is going to be wood. Now, the great thing about wood, number one, the beauty of wood cannot be matched by anybody. Wood is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's nothing matches the beauty of wood. The other good thing about wood is a lot like fiberglass and a lot like vinyl is wood is very temperature ignorant for sure, causing the product to sit there and be very energy efficient. When it comes to shapes, you can do darn near anything with wood. I mean, you can make a window out of just about anything. If you wanted to sit there and have a window shaped like the moon, you can make a wood window shaped like the moon that'll actually still open and close. So you have tremendous options. Okay.
If you can
Lots of
dream it,
options when it comes to shape. If that's correct. If you can dream it, you can pretty much do it with wood. That's a fact. Okay. However, at the same time, too, unlimited colors. It's unlimited because you can stain, paint, anything you want to go ahead and do. However, the drawback though to wood, number one, very high price point. Number two, well, it is in fact wood. So wood expands, contracts, a lot like, you know, certain types of vinyl. It certainly warps, it rots. At the same time too, mold, mildew. You know, let me ask you this, folks. What else do you think would be a challenge with wood? See if you can get an answer here. Okay. So there's where you're at there. However, with wood, again, because it's at a very high price point, what you're going to be looking at is basically something like that. The last thing that we have is a product called Fibrex. Fibrex is put out by Renewal by Andersen, and it is a wood composite. Now, the great thing about Fibrex, number one, is it is a proprietary product. Nobody on the planet carries it. It is a phenomenal product. It really, really, really is, folks. Okay. I wish I could stand here and tell everybody that it's so putrid, but it's actually really good. The great thing about it is, number one, frames are temperature ignorant. Okay. So again, like wood, like fiberglass, and like vinyl, doesn't transfer heat or cold from one side to another. So causing the product to be very energy efficient. Fibrex is a fairly strong product for sure. It's certainly stronger than vinyl. There is no doubt. Okay. And at the same time too, multiple colors. Okay. And you can get somewhat bigger windows because of its strength. However, the drawbacks to fiberglass or Fibrex, the number one main drawback, first off, is again, like fiberglass, you have mechanically fastened frames. And with these mechanically fastened frames, again, it's going to leak air. So what do I mean by that? You heard me say that about fiberglass, and you heard me say that now about Fibrex. So let me explain to you. Again, because the frames are mechanically fastened with screws and pins, when air comes through that comes into the house. So how does that happen? Just because your windows and doors are closed, okay, or in this case, your windows, because the windows are closed and they're sitting inside the wall the way that they are, air circulates through your walls, folks. You can see that closer on a windy day. On a windy day, if you take a lighter, okay, and you go ahead and you take a lighter on a windy day and you hold it up to your wall socket here, you'll see your flame start to go ahead and flicker around, okay? Because air circulates through there. So even though the windows are locked and closed, the air comes up through the mechanically fastened corners and you get air infiltration into the house. So when mechanically fastened frames, you have more air infiltration while closed is the big thing though, as opposed to open. The frames are extremely beefy. Very, very beefy frames. What I mean by very beefy, their reveal is going to be thicker in the front, but more importantly, from one side to another, from outside flange to inside flange, it's approximately 4.5 inches thick. So depending on the type of home that you live in, your blinds may or may not be able to go back up. Okay, your blinds may not go back up. At the same time, too, because of the thicker frames, a lot less glass. Now, I don't know if you're the type of people that like to look outside and look at your trees or the mountains and things like that. But if you are, you're certainly going to get a lot less of that with your Fibrex material. That being said, when it comes to price, though, somebody has to be the most expensive in the industry. And Renewal by Andersen had chosen to be that. That doesn't make them naughty or bad. That just means they're the ones that have chosen to go ahead and do that. Okay. Now, the biggest challenge that I have with this, other than its hefty price, which is a big thing, when it comes to Fibrex, they have the worst warranty in the industry. And what I mean by that is that warranty is a 22 and 10-year warranty, or 32 and 10, depending on when you buy the windows and what part of the country that you're actually in. So they're one of the few to almost only company in the country that does not offer a lifetime warranty. The next challenge that you have with Fibrex is drywall to drywall install. In most places, you're going to get a drywall to drywall install when it comes to Fibrex. So the challenge with that is because the frames are already beefier and thicker already. Now, when you're installing on top of the drywall, causes you to even lose more of your glass space. And on top of that, that also gives you less egress. In other words, you have less room in case of fire if you have to be able to sit there and jump out of this puppy for whatever that reason may be. Not that that would ever happen, but it's nice to know. I would rather sit there and have more space than less. That being said, these are the choices that you have when it comes to your frame choices. Okay, we'll get into the glass packages here in a minute. But if given the choice, and you do have that choice, of the 5 different types of frames that you see here, which one in your mind do you believe to be the best choice for you based on everything that we now know? They pick Vinyl Plus. Okay, so that being said, move the Vinyl Plus out of the way. Of the type that are remaining here, out of curiosity though, why not any of the other ones? Just out of curiosity, why not any of the others? Get our answers. Once we're done, go to our car and go get our window sample out. Okay, so where are the questions? What are the questions now?
I have one. So when you're crossing things off the vinyl list, are you specifically leaving, like, I noticed you left like Pitt, like, are you
Worcester,
specifically leaving the ones
Peel.
that we can answer to in the warranty?
Yes. So what I want to make sure I'm doing with vinyl is I want them to see, to make sure that they still see that these are all the challenges of vinyl for here, but on the Vinyl Plus, all of these are positives that actually make the pros way more than the cons out, at least on that. But we want to make sure that they can still see that. Am I answering that question right for you, Michelle, or am I misdoing that?
Like, you know, you'd written a whole list of things like work, chip, Pitt, this and that, but like Pitt specifically, I couldn't see the other ones because frankly, I need glasses, but Pitt for sure was left on there. And I was just wondering if are you specifically leaving the ones up there that you could turn around and show a warranty that it covers those? Like if they were to go, well,
Yes.
what about that? That's still there, what do why would we want vital, so you could immediately address it? I'm just wondering if there was a methodology there or not.
Well, the methodology there is our warranty covers pitting, okay? But at the same time too, vinyl does pit. I mean, it just does. Even ours does. But when it does happen, our warranty will go ahead and cover that.
Terry,
Real quick,
quick question.
this goes right back to what she was just saying. When you're doing it up there, you're not crossing them out, you're boxing them. What is the benefit of putting a box around them versus crossing them out? Because the box to me, it almost like highlights it versus like taking it off the list.
Well, it does, because see, here's where the challenge is. If you're going to sit there and you're going to cross it out completely, then you have to start your own pros versus cons of the Vinyl Plus. Then you have to do it. Because if you start crossing it off, then what that does is, again, optic wise, right? It makes the cons all of a sudden look a lot less than the pros. And I don't want them to pick vinyl, you know? When they sit there and say, oh yeah, what for that, I would still sit there and go with the $2 signs instead of the 2.5. Really? So optic wise, it's that. For me, I've always done it I've always done it this way. But I have seen others like Phil, for example. When Phil is doing the Vinyl Plus, he does a separate pros versus cons. So he'll have 6 pieces of paper instead of the 5. That's what he does. For me, I'm able to sit there and talk my way through it just fine and make it make sense to the customer with them. But if you're seeing that that's not working, then your best bet would be to create a separate piece of paper and do pros versus cons on the Vinyl Plus. Does that answer that, Cody?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Cut off Kate.
Anybody?
Was staying in there, sorry.
Leah, what, or Kate, or Ari? I'm sorry. What was your question? You all look the same. Sorry about that. I need glasses too.
Talk about, at least before on the glass package, you're talking more about the frame, and you dive in more in the details of the frame, and like what type of insulation you put inside, fiberglass. To what point in what part of your pitch are you actually diving in more into the details about our window?
Well, we're going to dive into our window once we go ahead and start pulling our window out. So again, as we get our glass, our meter kits in, that'll get us into the glass packages. As we pull out the actual window itself and start demoing the window, then what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to cover the very things that we're going to say, see, this is what separates us here. We do have the thicker gauge vinyl. We do have a fiberglass reinforced check rail. So in this part, here's where the iPad, I think, would be great here, because you can go to the explosion deal and pop that puppy open, start to blow things up and say, see, with ours, this is where you can see where the fiberglass reinforced check rail is for here and for the top sash here. Here's how that works. This is where we have our 1-inch super spacer, as opposed to others have 1/2 inch or 5/8 or 3/4 or 7/8 or whatever. When I do use the iPad, really and truly, this is the only time I actually use the iPad to demo anything. I'm not, I mean, obviously I use the iPad when it comes to the warranties and showing everybody else's warranty, but for actually pitching product, this is where I'll use it, because we don't have a parts and pieces bag. So because we don't have a parts and pieces bag, the closest thing we have to parts and pieces is going to be again, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the explosion thing. And that's what I'll do, is I'll pop that and blow that up so I can show all that there.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that's when I'll start getting into that. Other questions?
Yeah, so on the Vinyl Plus, you said that we're a little bit thicker. The customers I were at, was at, he asked me how thick that was. What's the answer to that?
Well, the answer to that is very simply, when I sit there and somebody asks me, really, it's thicker, so how much? You know what, sir? Here's what I'm gonna be able to tell you. I'm gonna be able to tell you is I have no idea. What I can tell you is a thicker gauge, and the reason why we know it's a thicker gauge, the biggest reason is because we cover warping. Any window company out there with a thinner gauge will not cover warping, period. The funny thing is, though, if you look into this for a second, we talked about this earlier, and Cody actually sent a thing out. I think it was the correct spelling, right? Is DeKunik. DeKunik is a German-based company, period. And because they use a thicker gauge vinyl. Everybody that uses the lineals from DeKunik, the extrusions from DeKunik, which is us for sure, Anlin for sure, Provia for sure, Window Mart also for sure, out of Royal, Arkansas. The one thing that we all have in common is warping gets covered under that warranty. Okay. And again, that's because it's a thicker gauge. Most everybody else, all side guys like that, if you'll notice on certain all side windows, they don't cover warping, but others do, like the mezzo window, that is a DeKunik extrusion coming from there. Okay. So that's what I tell everybody is, look, sir, I can't tell you how thick it is. That actual detail, even I don't know, but I know this though, sir. I know that the reason why we know it's a thicker gauge is because warping is covered under its warranty. And those are the only companies that cover that. And unfortunately, there's only a small handful that do that. And the reason why is because that vinyl material comes in at a higher price point, and everybody for the most part is more price point motivated. So that's the best answer I can give you, Mr. Customer. Can you accept that for right now? But just know that that's what it is. That's why we cover the warping.
Okay, and then just so we're clear, Champion, they told us they do UPVC, but their warranty doesn't cover warping. So
well,
do
okay, so let's not confuse things. PVC, all that means absolutely nothing. That does not describe the gauge of the product at all. It just tells you what the product is.
That's what I'm trying to, okay, yeah, that's what I'm trying to go towards. So it's the UPVC in combination with the thicker gauge is the only way it's gonna cover warping.
Right. I mean, in the end, that's what it's the two biggest differences when it comes to vinyl windows is how much plastic is in the damn thing and how thick is it? What's the gauge on it? Okay. Some people will sit there, and I've had, bless you, I've had a smart ass tell me before, well, I'm looking at your vinyl here and I don't see that that's any much thicker than here. So I don't see where the big difference is. Well, then let's give them an analogy they can understand. 1 degree doesn't make a difference, right? In theory, 1 degree doesn't make a difference, whether it's 99 or 100 degrees. When you're looking at it that way, you're right, it doesn't. But what's the difference between a big pot of water at 33 degrees versus 32? At 33 degrees, you get very cold water. At 32 degrees, you get ice. So the difference in a gauge of a product, we may not be able to visually see it ourselves, but clearly there's a difference there based on how that product is warranted. Because if it wasn't, then everybody in the world would warranty it the same way. Okay. So there is a difference when it comes to something as small as that. Again, what's the difference between having very hot water versus steam? 1 degree. Just depends on what you're talking about. So sometimes in an answer like that, you may have to give that type of analogy where somebody goes, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah. At 32 degrees, we have ice. At 33 degrees, we have really cold water. At 33 degrees, I can jump in that. At 32 degrees, I break my face jumping into it. Okay. So that's what I would sit there and say. Just be transparent. Say, look, I know a lot of crap about a lot of things. What I don't know, I really don't know the gauge, the thickness gauge, and really and truly, it doesn't really matter other than the fact that the warping is covered. Because having a thicker gauge vinyl is not going to make it more secure. It's not going to make it more energy efficient. It's not going to change any of that. What it does, however, do is it does change the warping for sure, as to whether a company can cover it or not. So that's what I tell everybody. Does that help, Norm?
Yep.
Okay. Who else?
Larry, in reference to fiberglass maintenance, how often does that have to be done?
You know what? That's actually a really cool question because it's hard to sit there and say, you guys are gonna have to come up with your own answers. And the reason for it is, you know, my experience in certain towns, especially coastal areas like closer to the beach of California or Florida, or down in Galveston, Texas, or whatever. When you get closer to all that seawater, maintenance is different on everything, right? I mean, cars rust out a lot more in those areas, things like that. Here, we don't see shit like that here. However, because of the intense sun we have here, then the UV rays certainly damage things a lot faster. I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest with you, other than to try to find out, that, hey, look, you're going to have to do this approximately probably a year, once or twice a year, maybe, folks. I don't know for sure. Part of it has to do with, too, is how lucky or how unlucky you are. I mean, I've used that analogy 100 times. Folks, like me, I'm an unlucky guy. I could be in a room with 100 people. There's one mosquito that has malaria, and the mosquito bites one person and then sits there and dies. I'm the guy that he bites because I got bad luck like that. I've only had good luck 3 times in my entire life. One, I asked 2 different women to marry me and they said yes, and my children. That's the best luck I've ever had. Everything else is all bad. So how you look at that, folks, I don't know. But I'd sit there and say once, maybe twice a year, you may have to do that, but I don't know.
There's a shootout.
Hey, Clary, I got a question.
Sure.
In regards to the difference between UPVC and a 60-40 split, are there certain specific line items in the warranty that you look out for that you can show homeowners so they can see the difference?
I don't know about that. I mean, I do know when you start, I mean, again, polyvinyl chloride is really what we're talking about here versus more plastic. And I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that one, to be honest with you, Jimmy. I just know that because there's so much plastic in it, there's just so many more problems with the damn thing, and usually one's warranty reflects that based on what it does or does not cover. I mean, here's a good one. Look at Pella, for example. Okay. One of the things that I've always said about Pella, and the only time I stayed away from it as well when I worked for Pella has got a 3 or a 4-page warranty. And look at a lot of these warranties. Look at a lot of them. They'll tell you what they cover, but there's always going to be something as to what do they not cover. And my answer to everybody has always been, hey, look, I got to sit there and say this. When the list of what they don't cover is longer than the list that they do cover, folks, you probably have a problem here. There's probably a problem. Okay. And when you look at that list of all the shit that it doesn't cover, like with Pella, it is certainly a longer list than what it does cover. That's the best I could tell you, Jimmy, if that helps, or if I'm hearing your question the correct way, Jimmy. If I'm not, then help me out.
No, that's good. I'm just trying to wrap my head around exactly what 60-40 split windows are. Like, I mean, I've always sold Novart as being one of those plasticized windows, and based on their warranty, that's probably accurate, but I just don't know. I'm trying to figure out how do I what the difference is.
Okay, so ideas, I can help you out here. Ideas of or to give you an idea of a 60-40 split frame. When you start looking, go to Lowe's and Home Depot and you look at Crestmark, Elenco, Alcoa type windows, stuff like that. Those are all going to be 60-40 split vinyl windows. You take Pella, for example, you have 3 different lines of vinyl windows through Pella. You got the 350, the 250, and then you have the their EchoStar, or as you would know out at Lowe's, the Thermal Star. Okay, that's going to be a 60-40 split type of product right there. It's their cheesiest, shittiest product that they've got. They know it, and they're not. That's what it is. Provia, you've got the Aries series, the Endure series, but their Echolite, if you will, that is their crappiest window. They pretty much don't want anybody to be selling that in a home if they can help it. That would be another example of a 60-40 split type of frame. Something that sits there and is going to warp very quickly, typically will fade out and start fading or turning yellow, even if it's white on the fairly quicker side of things. That would be what I would call a 60-40 split type of frame. All of your contractor grade stuff where these guys are buying windows by bulk for 30, 40, $50 a pop, That's what you're gonna be getting. That's where you'll tend to sit there and see it. Other than that, every other window company, you're not gonna really see that other than their cheapest product, like Milgard. You look at their worst vinyl window that they've got, that chances are, that's probably gonna be a 60-40 split type of frame. Chances are,
Are there any
if that
windows
gives you an idea.
Yeah, no, that helps. As far as reprocessed vinyl,
Which company sell those?
yeah, where are those being made or built or sold?
You know, truth be told, I've said that for years and years and years. Most companies don't do it anymore and use reprocess. And the ones that are doing it is nobody that you and I would have to ever worry about for the most part. And again, you're going to get into more of a contractor grade type. Some of these windows that you will see that these are made with green material and all this other bullshit, and you do see that part. I can tell you now that's going to be some sort of reprocess for sure. Where this was saying, hey, look, we made this from, recycled this. I can tell you now they're not getting 100% pure virgin vinyl. I don't give a damn what nobody says, because there's no way to guarantee that. There's no way to guarantee that. That's about the only times you'll see it, Jimmy. So part of the reason why I use it, do you have to use reprocess? No, I just do it because the more stuff I throw out there like that, the smarter I sound in front of the customer. And the smarter I sound and more of the expert I sound, the more more credibility I build. That's all. But if you didn't mention reprocess, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Nobody's going to quiz you on it. I mean, just next to nobody is going to quiz you on it.
So Terry, going back to the warping part, like on the warranty to identify that, does it need to say like we do cover warranty or warping blatantly? Or if it just says like we cover everything, but it doesn't exclude warping, like where's the gray line there? Because Champions, theirs didn't say anything about warping at all in there as an exclusion or an inclusion. And then like the Milgard warranty for the Tuscany intrinsic and style line, also the only time they talk about warping is in the modified coverage in regards to the capstock frame, like the capstock. So I want to make sure we're positioned that right, and they get somebody that comes in with, from Milgard, and they're like, oh no, it covers warranty unless you're doing the capstock, which is like the colors,
Right. So when it comes to warping, window warranties, like I said, they're kind of funny. You have to really read through them. A lot of times, what you can sit there and see, you have to kind of read between the lines on certain stuff, right? When you start looking at what we will actually cover, chip, fade, peel, pit. Okay. If that's what they got there, it does that. But then you'll look down somewhere else where it'll sit there and say doesn't cover if it warps because of high heat this or high heat that. But at the same time, if you look into the things that we do not cover, if warping is not in that, then warping gets covered, because that's the way Provia is. And Provia is quick to sit there and tell you when you talk to them, do you guys cover warping in the window? Absolutely, we do. They're quick to sit there and tell you that, even though the warranty doesn't say we cover warping. What it's not included in warping is what it does not cover, and warping is not in that part. Okay, so you just have to kind of read through these warranties. They can be kind of, kind of misleading at stuff. So you just have to kind of read through and then kind of read between the lines on some of them. Not everything is very clear, Cody. But I can tell you on all the stuff you're talking about, any painted material is not going to be covered under the warping at all in most cases. In most. Because painted materials heat up really quick, especially if they're dark colors.
Okay. Then one other question I had, because Jimmy and I were role playing do this the other day, and when we were writing out like the dollar signs and stuff, and then getting to like kind of the price condition or price presentation sheet. Is there an issue? Because I mean, we're writing down, vinyl is $2 signs or 2.5 for vinyl plus, and then we're getting to our price presentation sheet, and we're writing down the fair market value that is up there, pretty on par with like Firex, wood, fiberglass, all of that. So how do we position that and say, hey, wood's 5 and Firex is 6, but when we show our fair market value, even though the vinyl plus says 2.5, like we're pretty damn close to it. How do you explain that? Because I can see that coming up.
Well, so there's a couple ways first off to go about that. Number one, we're not sitting there giving them a price of fair market value for our product. First off, fair market value for triple pane windows in general. That's number one. Number two, when we're talking about this stuff here, what we're talking about is vinyl frame only. Obviously, there's going to be a difference in dollar signs, if you will, from a triple to a double. What we're talking about is vinyl frames only. And when you're looking at just the frame only, this is where you're at, not the overall product. Will that actually come up? You know, Cody, if I was saying, if I took 2 years, now this is only me. If I took 2 years of selling, what you're saying probably has come up 1.5 to 2.5 dozen times, give or take, that I've run into it. And that's usually what I come across with is, well, wait a minute, you said 2.5 stars. Okay, well, first off, fair market value, that is on triple pane, period, not necessarily us. So what I'm trying to sit there and show you is here's fair market value. Clearly, because we don't advertise and do all the things that we do, which means we don't have the dollars and cents in it like everybody does. This is why our 1 year price is where it is. And as you can see, big difference between us and what they consider to be fair market value for all other triple pane windows. Which, if they're calling DeBella, if they're calling Sears or somebody like that, that fair market value would certainly support that we're showing. Okay. But our fair market value is actually our 1 year price. It's our price that we're going to do business today on our promotional pricing, so to speak, that this is where we're actually really coming in. And again, we can always explain why we're coming in at a price point the way that we are, because we don't suffer the dollars and cents of not just advertising, but we don't have an office like you do, Cody. You don't have 9 admins or 8 admin people in there that we're paying all these hourly rates to. So that's how we can keep all of our costs down, because our overhead is a lot less than most everybody else's. And that's a fact for sure. Other than when all your reps and everybody is in, it's a goddamn ghost town in every office you go into. So that's what I would sit there and say.
Thank you, Jay.
Does that work though, guys?
Yeah.
Does that work, Jimmy?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thoughts, concerns, anything? Okay. Well, here's what I will say. First off, how did before I let you guys go, how did you guys feel about the JSP training thing yesterday?
It was good. It was very good.
Did you guys pick up some good nuggets out of that?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, as you guys saw, it is certainly going to be a little bit different than the door approach that we're going to use. But for most of you there, should be something that you guys have heard before. Did you hear anything that was different than even what you were doing before when you're doing the Apex thing before? Or was it more or less the same? Because I didn't get to sit in on it because of the interviews. So that's why I'm
Yeah,
asking you guys.
It's pretty much the exact same as before, or at least what we were doing out here in Portland. I didn't hear anything different.
Okay, Seattle, did you guys hear anything different, Cameron?
There was some things, but it was more or less a lot of similar stuff that we were doing or had done.
Okay. Well, if you got good nuggets out of it, that's what counts. I mean, we showed up, we were there, and I want to make sure that we are doing that so they don't think we're being obstinate about shit. But at the same time, too, there's always going to be some nuggets in there. That's so weird. I'm talking about nuggets just as Cody walks out of the restroom.
Sorry, fucking water bottle. God damn it! I'm trying to beat Danny. Take that how you will.
They have electronic water bottles that literally like gauge how much ahead the other one is in water consumption. So she's at home drinking water right now, and so Cody has to pee every 15 minutes.
Whoop, it's red now. It's blinking red.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's red when I take it. It literally tracks how much water you drink, and then you can add other people to like compete against. It's pretty cool.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and that's why it'll flash red on the bottom if I haven't drank or I'm behind on my goal, and then it'll show like how much water I'm at, and then that's Danny right there where she's at, and then like yeah, and you can add on. There's competitions and like challenges online. I just got to help me drink more water because I was drinking too much beer.
Okay. Hey, do me a favor. Send me the information on that.
Okay, yeah, I will for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Hey, listen, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to let you guys go. So as I can steal my managing senior partners, Because we've got a lot to talk about. Well, first off, it's gonna start, we gotta start talking about you guys first off. And we don't want you to hear that. You know, I think we'll start with the bald-headed people first, and we'll work our way down to the bearded people and, you know, the female people after that. The ones that are dressed like Eskimos, we'll go there next. You know, not that we have any Eskimo dressing people here, but, you know, just saying. You're gonna have to do something about your dress attire, Miss Nicole. I'm not lying to you. Every time I look at you, you look like the person with zero neck. All I can see is this. So thank you for everything, guys. I appreciate it. Just so you know, just so you don't think I forgot, because I didn't. There will be a 20-page or 20-question test that the MSPs will have on Monday. Everybody will take a test, just so you know, for the final on this to find out where you're at. And I'll leave it up to the MSPs to sit there and beat you with a ruler or not. That's up to them. So thanks for everybody, guys. MSPs, let's get on this call if that's okay. I'm getting a shady spot. Let's do this like I've got 11